My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 34 years old, and I used to believe keeping quiet was the price of keeping a family. Then Christmas dinner happened, and my mother put her hands on my 10-year-old daughter. My daughter had only pulled out a chair. That was it. She was standing beside the place card with her small fingers on the back of the seat, trying to smile like she belonged there. My mother crossed the room so fast the silverware stopped moving. She grabbed my daughter by the arm, yanked her backward, and snapped, "That spot is for my real grandson. Out." Then she turned, pulled my brother's son into the chair, and smoothed his sweater like she had just corrected a seating mistake instead of humiliating a child. My daughter stumbled. Her foot caught the rug. Her knee hit the floor in front of the whole table. 20 adults saw it. Nobody moved. Nobody said her name. Nobody even reached for her hand. My father looked at the red mark forming on her knee and said coldly, "Just sit somewhere else." That was the moment something inside me went silent. Not broken. Silent. I helped my daughter stand, brushed her dress with my hands, and felt her shaking against me. My mother lifted her wine glass like the conversation was already over. I looked at her, then at my father, then at my brother across the table. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I only said 3 words. "Check your phone." The first notification rang. Then another. Then another. My mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered against her plate. My father went pale before he even opened the message, and my brother whispered, "What did you do?" Before I tell you what was on that phone and why 3 words ruined their perfect Christmas, tell me what the weather is like where you are. Does it match your mood today? Because this story is not just about a chair. It is about the day I finally stopped begging for a place in a family that had been stealing from me the whole time. My mother's name was Marilyn Brooks, and most people thought she was elegant, organized, and generous. I knew the truth. Marilyn was generous only when it gave her control. My father, Grant, rarely raised his voice because my mother usually did the cutting for him. He just sat back, cold and quiet, while she decided who mattered. My brother, Carter, always mattered. He was the first son, the only son, the one who carried the Brooks name like it was a royal title. I was the daughter born after a year of whispered trouble in my parents' marriage, and even though nobody told me the truth, I felt the punishment for it in every room. Carter got praise, I got correction. Carter got help, I got lectures. Carter got second chances. I got told to make better choices. By the time I became a mother, I expected very little, but I still hoped my daughter might soften them. Ava was 10, sweet, careful, and always trying to be good enough for people who barely saw her. My mother had a completely different smile for Carter's son, Owen. He was 7 and innocent, but my parents treated him like a crown. They called him their real Brooks boy, their legacy, their little man. At family dinners, Owen got the seat closest to my mother. At holidays, he got the biggest gifts. When Ava had a school choir performance, my mother was too tired to come. The next weekend, she sat through 2 of Owen's soccer games in the cold, with a blanket and a handmade sign. When Ava turned 9, my parents gave her a clearance sweater. When Owen turned 6, they rented a bounce house and bought him a battery-powered Jeep. I was not jealous of a child. I was angry at the adults who made one child feel worshipped and another feel tolerated. Still, I kept showing up. I was a single mom, divorced for 3 years, working as a patient billing coordinator at a pediatric clinic in Columbus. Money was always tight, but I never asked for luxury. Once, my car needed an urgent repair, and I asked my mother if I could borrow $800 for 2 weeks. She sighed and said, "Natalie, you need to learn planning." A month later, Carter posted photos of his finished basement with a wet bar and stone fireplace. My mother called it an investment in family memories. Another time, Ava got invited to a summer science program, and my father said she did not need fancy extras. That same summer, Owen went to a private sports camp 3 states away. After one dinner, Ava asked me from the back seat, "Mom, does Grandma like boys better?" I wanted to lie, but all I could say was, "Some people do not know how to love fairly." She looked out the window and whispered, "I can be better next time." That sentence broke something in me. The word real had always floated around my family. Real Brooks. Real blood. Real grandson. Real family. My father once looked at Ava's dark curls and said, "Funny how traits skip around when the bloodline gets complicated." My mother gave him a look that did not mean stop. That is cruel. It meant not here. I had heard rumors growing up about a fight before I was born, a man my mother once knew, and a question my father never let die. Nobody told me the truth. They just made me live under the punishment for it. And because I had been trained to accept crumbs, I kept bringing Ava around for holidays. I told myself family mattered. I told myself Ava deserved grandparents. I told myself one day they would see her the way I did. Smart, gentle, funny, real. Then, a few weeks before Christmas, my mother called and asked me to help decorate. She said Carter was busy and her back hurt. I went because some part of me was still trying to earn love from people who had already decided the price would never be paid. That afternoon, I found out why they always had money for Carter and never had money for me. It was the last Saturday of November, gray and cold, the kind of Ohio afternoon where Christmas lights try to make everything look warmer than it is. My parents lived in the same brick house in Dublin they had owned for years. When I arrived, my mother had 6 storage bins lined up in the living room, and Carter had already canceled because of a client emergency. My father was in the garage, pretending to organize tools. Ava was at a friend's birthday party, so I came alone. My mother handed me coffee and said, "You are a lifesaver." That was my role. Not equal daughter, not cherished child. Lifesaver when convenient. We spent hours hanging garland, untangling lights, and setting out ceramic angels my mother collected but never seemed to learn from. She talked about Christmas dinner, Carter's family, Owen's new bow tie, and the custom place cards she had ordered. When I asked if Ava could help set them out this year, my mother smiled too quickly and said, "We will see where everyone fits." I did not know it yet, but that was a warning. Later, while making pie filling, she asked me to check the grocery delivery time on the family iPad. The screen opened to email. I was about to swipe away when a notification appeared. Evelyn Pierce Family Trust Annual Distribution Review. Evelyn Pierce was my grandmother, my mother's mother. She had run a small catering business for decades and saved everything. After she died, my mother told me there was no inheritance. "The estate was mostly expenses," she said. I believed her because believing your mother is easier than accepting she might be robbing you while asking you to hang Christmas lights. But the email preview had my name in it. Not Carter's. Mine. I tapped it. The PDF opened and my stomach went cold. At the top was my grandmother's full name. Then I saw the words, Revocable Living Trust, Beneficiary Distribution, Annual Accounting Summary. And then the line that made the room tilt. Beneficiaries, Natalie Brooks and Carter Brooks. Equal shares. The original principal after my grandmother's death was $450,000. Half of that was supposed to be mine. $225,000. That was not luxury money. That was safety. That was Ava's dental bill. That was the apartment deposit I could not afford. That was every car repair that made me cry in a parking lot. I scrolled with shaking hands. Carter's home renovation, Owen's private school deposit, Carter's business loan, a vehicle down payment, a family vacation rental in Hilton Head. The same summer my mother told me there was no room for Ava and me because The house is already full. My mother was humming in the pantry while my name sat on a document proving she had used my grandmother's money to build Carter's comfort. I took photos with my phone. The trust name, the beneficiary page, the distribution history. Just enough proof before the door closed again. When my mother returned with flour, I had already put the iPad back on the grocery page. "Everything okay?" she asked. I smiled, the kind of smile women use when danger is wearing a familiar face. "Delivery is 20 minutes away," I said. She went back to her pie. I stood there watching her press dough into a pan with the same hands that had signed away my future, and something inside me changed. On the drive home, I kept hearing her old sentences. There was nothing set aside. "Your grandmother was not prepared. We cannot help you. Be responsible, Natalie." They had not been unable to help. They had chosen not to. That night, after Ava fell asleep, I searched for trust attorneys near Columbus. My first instinct was still to confront my mother, which shows how deep the damage went. But then I looked down the hall toward Ava's room and remembered her asking if she could be better next time. No. I was done asking people who hurt us to grade their own behavior. I saved the screenshots in 3 places and booked a consultation with a probate and trust attorney named Sofia Ramirez. I did not know yet that Sofia would be the reason my mother dropped that wine glass on Christmas. I only knew this. For the first time in my life, I was not walking into my family's storm with empty hands. Sofia Ramirez's office was on the 4th floor of a downtown building with clean windows, quiet carpet, and a receptionist who made me feel like I should sit up straighter. I almost left before my appointment. I sat in the parking garage gripping my phone, trying to talk myself out of it. Maybe I misunderstood the document. Maybe the money had been used properly. Maybe my mother had an explanation that would make me feel ashamed for doubting her. That is what families like mine do to you. They make the truth feel rude. Then Ava texted me a picture from school. She had drawn a snowman with a purple scarf and written, "For your office, Mom." I looked at that little drawing and got out of the car. Sophia did not gasp when she saw the screenshots. She read quietly, asked exact questions, and took notes. Who was Evelyn Pierce? Who controlled the trust after her death? Did my mother ever give me an accounting? Did I sign a waiver? Did I receive any distributions? With every no, Sophia's pen moved faster. Finally, she looked at me and said, "Natalie, if these screenshots are accurate, you were not forgotten. You were bypassed." Bypassed sounded clean, but it meant the same thing. They found a way around me. Sophia explained that if my grandmother named Carter and me as equal beneficiaries, then my mother, as trustee, had legal duties. She had to act in the interest of both of us. She had to keep records. She could not treat the trust like Carter's emergency wallet. If my father helped authorize or hide transfers, he could be pulled into it too. My voice shook when I asked, "What if they say I am not really family?" Sophia's eyes sharpened. "Is your name on the trust?" I said yes. She said, "Then that is where we start." Trustees do not get to rewrite a document because dinner table cruelty feels convenient. For the first time in years, I laughed a little. Sophia warned me it could get ugly. People who misuse family money rarely respond with honesty first. They respond with outrage, tears, threats, or sudden concern for unity. That sounded exactly like my family. She laid out the plan. A formal demand for records. A petition for full accounting in probate court. If the document supported it, we could ask the court to freeze remaining trust assets, remove or restrict the trustee, demand repayment, add interest, recover legal fees, and seek penalties. The legal terms were new to me, but the meaning was simple. My mother had touched money she had no right to redirect, and paper was finally going to say so. Over the next 2 weeks, Sophia's team moved quietly. They verified enough to confirm the screenshots were not a misunderstanding. My name was there. My share was real. the transfers were real. Sophia drafted the emergency petition and said we could file before Christmas. I hesitated, because the old voice in my head was still alive. Do not ruin the holiday. Do not make a scene. Do not make your mother cry. I told Sophia maybe we should wait until after Christmas dinner. She looked at me and said, "Are you protecting peace? Or are you protecting the people who benefit from your silence?" I did not answer because the answer embarrassed me. Still, I asked her to have everything ready, just not file yet. Sophia said, "If anything happens, text me the word send." On Christmas afternoon, Ava came out in a dark green dress and showed me the card she had made for my mother. It had a red cardinal sitting on a snowy branch. "Do you think Grandma will like it?" she asked. I said yes because I hated myself less for lying when the lie protected her hope. At dinner, when my mother yanked Ava out of that chair, Hope died so fast I could almost hear it crack. Ava's knee hit the floor. My father told her to sit somewhere else. Carter stared at his plate. My mother lifted her glass, and the last thread tying me to their version of family snapped. I helped Ava stand with one hand. With the other, I unlocked my phone and texted Sophia one word: send. Less than a minute later, the notifications began. Not official service from the court. Not magic. A notice of filing from my attorney, copied to my mother, my father, and Carter, with the emergency petition attached. The subject line said, "Evelyn Pierce Family Trust, petition for accounting and asset freeze." That was what they saw when I said, "Check your phone." That was why my mother's glass fell. That was why my father went pale, because they knew I was not guessing anymore. I had proof, counsel, and a court file with my name on it. Ava did not cry until we got to the car. In the house, with everyone staring and nobody helping, she held herself together like tears would make her even more unwelcome. But once I closed the passenger door, her face collapsed. She covered her knee with both hands and whispered, "Grandma does not think I am real." I pulled into a quiet side street, turned toward her, and said, "Listen to me. You are real. You are my daughter. You are not less because someone else is cruel. You do not have to earn a chair in any room." She asked, "Then why did nobody help?" I had no pretty answer, so I gave her the truth. "Because some adults choose comfort over doing what is right. That is not your fault." She nodded, but I could tell the words had not reached the hurt yet. At home, I put ice on her knee, made cocoa with too many marshmallows, and turned on a Christmas movie. She curled into the corner of the couch, still wearing her green dress under a blanket, like she was afraid to take up too much space even in our own home. My phone kept buzzing. My mother called first, crying, "How could you do this to me at Christmas?" Not one word about Ava. My father warned, "You have no idea what you are starting." Carter snapped, "You are going after Mom over money?" Then the family group chat exploded. Aunt Patricia said it should have been handled privately. Someone else wrote, "Your poor mother is shaking." My poor mother. Not poor Ava. Not the child who got dragged out of a chair. Not the little girl with an ice pack asking if she was real. That told me everything. Silence at the table had not been shock. It had been a vote. So I voted back. I typed one message. Anyone who watched a child get pulled to the floor and stayed silent does not get to lecture me about family. Then I left the chat. Carter moved the fight to Facebook, where cowards go when they want applause without facts. He posted, "Some people choose greed over family, even on Christmas." The comments filled with hearts and praying hands from people who had no idea what happened. I screenshotted everything and sent it to Sophia. She replied, "Do not engage. Save everything, especially threats." That became my rule. Do not explain to people committed to misunderstanding you. Save the evidence. Protect the child. Around midnight, my mother texted, "Think about what this will do to your father's health." I looked at Ava asleep beside me, one hand near her bruised knee, and wrote back, "You should have thought about health before you put your hands on my daughter." Then I blocked her, my father, and Carter. The silence afterward felt strange, almost too clean, like opening a window in a room that had been full of smoke for years. The next morning, Ava asked if we had to go back and apologize. I was making pancakes, and I set the spatula down because I wanted her to remember my answer. No. She asked, "Even if they are mad?" I said, "Especially then." Her shoulders lowered a little, and that tiny movement was worth more than any inheritance. Later, Sophia called and said the petition had been accepted for emergency review. A hearing would be scheduled quickly because trust assets could still be moved. She warned me my family would attack my character. I told her they had been doing that since I was born. Now they would have to do it in front of a judge. From that day on, I made the rule clear: no visits, no calls, no surprise drop-ins, no using relatives to pass messages. If anyone wanted to talk, they could talk through my attorney. They had taken money from me. They did not get to take my daughter's safety too. The first hearing was quieter than people imagine court to be. No shouting, no dramatic confession. Just fluorescent lights, folders, and a judge who looked like he had heard every version of family betrayal before. My mother arrived in pearls, dressed like she was going to a charity lunch instead of answering questions about a trust she had drained. My father sat beside her with his jaw tight. Carter looked angry, but underneath it, I saw panic. Their attorney claimed it was all a misunderstanding. She said my grandmother valued family support, and the money had been used where it was needed. Sophia stood and kept her voice calm. "Your Honor, the trust names two equal beneficiaries. My client received no accounting, no distribution, and no notice of these transfers. We are asking for preservation of records, a freeze on further movement of trust assets, and a full accounting." Their attorney tried to talk about family dynamics. Sophia brought it back to documents. The judge granted the freeze and ordered full records: bank statements, transfer approvals, trustee notes, communications, receipts, everything. My mother had controlled the story at dinner tables for years. Now she had to tell it in paperwork. That is where liars start losing. Over the next weeks, documents arrived. Carter's kitchen remodel, $38,000. Owen's private school tuition, $18,000. Carter's business loan payoff, $52,000. Truck down payment, $12,000. Hilton Head vacation rental, $9,000. Emergency family support, $25,000, with no repayment agreement and no explanation except Carter's name. Every line was a receipt for a lie. Every number pulled a memory out of me. The science program Ava could not attend. The apartment deposit I had begged for after our old building had 2 break-ins. The dental bill I paid in installments while my mother told me to budget better. The worst page was the approval sheet. Marilyn Brooks, trustee signature. Again and again. My mother had not looked away. She had looked directly at the documents and signed. At the next hearing, they tried to make the case about me. Their attorney said I had financial stress and anger over perceived favoritism. Then my father reached for the oldest weapon. He claimed there had always been questions about whether I was truly his daughter, so maybe my grandmother never meant for me to benefit equally. My mother stared down at the table while the same lie she had allowed my whole life got dressed up for court. Sophia answered before I could even breathe. The trust does not condition distribution on a DNA test. It names Natalie Brooks. Family rumor is not a legal defense to fiduciary misconduct. The judge asked if they had any document showing my grandmother intended to disinherit me. They did not. He asked if I had signed a waiver. I had not. He asked if they had provided accountings. They had not. That was the sound of their story cracking. Not with a scream, but with 3 empty answers. More evidence came in. Texts showed my father saying, "Natalie does not need to know. She will just make it emotional." One email from my mother said, "Please process this under family support for Carter. Natalie is not in a position to manage a large distribution responsibly." I read that sentence until the words stopped looking real. She had used the struggle she created as the reason to keep taking from me. First, they take the latter. Then they criticize you for being on the ground. Sophia filed for surcharge, interest, fees, and removal of my mother's authority over anything remaining. Carter was pulled into a related claim because several transfers directly benefited him without proper documentation. Suddenly, his Facebook posts stopped. Suddenly, relatives who had called me greedy became very interested in not taking sides. At the final hearing, the judge ruled clearly. My mother had breached her fiduciary duty. My father had helped conceal and approve improper transfers. They had to repay my share, $225,000, plus interest, attorney fees, and penalties. The total came to just under $340,000. Carter had to cooperate in repayment for transfers he received or face civil action and liens. My mother made a small sound. My father turned red. Carter put his head in his hands. Sophia touched my elbow and whispered, "It is done." But it was not done for them. My father had to sell his restored classic car. Carter had to sell a work truck and take out a real loan. My mother resigned from the church charity board after people started asking why a woman who managed bake sale money could not be trusted with her own mother's trust. And the brick house with the perfect dining room, the same house where my daughter hit the floor, had to be listed for sale. My parents called it heartbreaking. I called it math. They owed money. The house had equity. For once, reality did not bend around their feelings. When the listing went online, I stared at the photos of that dining room for a long time. The table was polished. The chairs were straight. Everything looked peaceful. But I knew what had happened there. And now they could not afford to keep the room where they taught my child she did not belong. Relatives who once told me to apologize suddenly sent careful messages asking if Ava and I were okay. I did not answer most of them. Winning in court did not make me want the family back. It showed me how long I had been standing outside a locked door, begging people inside to call it home. After the judgment, I thought the word real would finally lose its power. The court had not cared about it. The trust had not cared about it. My grandmother's document named me clearly, and the law treated my name like enough. But old poison does not leave just because a judge signs something. A week later, my father sent one final text. "Take a test if you want to keep pretending you are a Brooks." I did not take the test for him. I did not owe him proof. I took it because I was tired of carrying a question two selfish adults had hung around my neck before I could even speak. The result came on a Tuesday morning after Ava left for school. I opened the email at the kitchen counter. Biological relationship confirmed. Probability of paternity greater than 99.99%. Grant Brooks was my father. The first feeling was not relief. It was rage. He had been wrong the whole time, and even if he had not been, none of it would have justified what they did. A child should not have to pass a blood test to deserve kindness. I sent the result to both of them with one sentence. "You punished a child for a lie you were too cowardly to face." Then I blocked them. 2 weeks later, my mother came to my apartment. Ava was at school, so I opened the door only as far as the chain allowed. My mother looked smaller without lipstick, pearls, or control. She started with, "Your father has been under so much stress." I almost closed the door. Then she said, "I am sorry. Things got out of hand." Out of hand, like bad weather. Not years of choices, not signatures, not my daughter on the floor. I asked, "Did you know?" Her face crumpled. Yes. She admitted there had been someone else before I was born. My father suspected it, and when I was born, He looked at me like a question instead of a daughter. I thought if I let him be angry, he would stay, she whispered. I thought I was protecting the family. I looked at her and finally understood. Her weakness had teeth. You did not protect the family, I said. You fed me to it. She cried and asked to see Ava. She said now that everything was clear, maybe we could rebuild. That phrase told me she still did not understand. It should not have needed to be clear, I said. You were my mother before a test result. Ava was your granddaughter before Christmas dinner. Love that depends on proof is not love. It is a contract, and I am not signing it for my child. I told her Ava would not be seeing her. My daughter would not become a prop in her redemption story. Forgiveness was not access, and regret was not repair. Then I closed the door. My hands shook afterward, not because I was unsure, but because ending a pattern that old feels like fear before it feels like freedom. 4 months later, the money came through after the house sold. I paid off debt, fixed my car, opened a college fund for Ava, and moved us into a safer apartment with better locks, better light, and a small balcony where Ava planted basil in a cracked blue pot. My parents downsized into a rental. Carter's business survived, but not comfortably. The relatives who once called me greedy now spoke carefully, as if the truth were a hot pan. I let them have their discomfort. It was not mine to manage anymore. The next Christmas, Ava and I made spaghetti instead of turkey. We invited my coworker, our downstairs neighbor, and Ava's best friend. Nobody had assigned seats. Nobody used the word real. Ava sat wherever she wanted, laughing with sauce on her chin. At one point, she looked around our small apartment and said, "This feels like family." And she was right. Family is not proven by blood, last names, holiday photos, or who gets the special chair. Family is proven by protection, fairness, and the adult who stands up when a child is hurt. Peace built on a child's humiliation is not peace. It is permission. I will never teach my daughter that love means shrinking, begging, or accepting cruelty because the person hurting you shares your blood. A child learns self-worth by watching what the adults around them allow. If I had gone back, apologized, and handed Ava over for another holiday, I would have taught her that keeping relatives comfortable mattered more than keeping herself safe. Instead, I wanted her to learn something better. Boundaries are not cruelty. Truth is not disrespect. Walking away from people who harm you is not destroying a family. Sometimes it is the first honest thing anyone has done in generations. My mother lost her house, her reputation, and the story she used to control us. My father lost the lie he hid behind. Carter lost the money pipeline he thought was birthright. And Ava gained certainty. She knows she is real. She knows she is loved. And if someone ever tries to pull her out of a place where she belongs, she knows her mother will not ask politely for them to stop. So tell me honestly, if your own family humiliated your child in front of everyone, would you walk away quietly, or would you make them check their phone too?
My team and I put care into every story so it can feel entertaining, emotional, and meaningful for the people watching. Please remember that this story is completely fictional and created only for storytelling and educational value. We hope it reminds you that toxic behavior should not be excused just because it comes from someone close.